All right. So as we get started, let's begin with kind of dividing this region, Southeast Asia, up into two general areas. One is the mainland Southeast Asia, and that includes Myanmar, Laos, Vietnam, Thailand, and Cambodia. And that's on part of course, the Eurasian plate. And then we have the insular region, and this is the islands. Okay, so we're talking about Indonesia, which has literally thousands of different islands. Malaysia is considered part of the insular region as well, since it has part of its territory on an island. Same with Singapore, Brunei, the Philippines. And so that's the insular region. And they do differ a little bit, but that's kind of our general way of dividing up that region. Now, tectonically, this is the collision of four plates. So much of it's on the Eurasian plate, but that's being hit from the bottom by the Australian plate, creating that subduction zone, right? A convergent plate boundary with lots of earthquakes and volcanoes. You also have the Pacific plate hitting it from the other side, and then the Philippine plate. And the Philippines are very active tectonically as well, especially with volcanic activity, as we'll talk about. So lots of earthquakes in some of those regions, and tsunamis. But with the volcanoes, you do get good soils, although they are a danger. One example, the island of Java down in Indonesia. Its area is about the same size as the state of Iowa. And the state of Iowa has 2 million people in it. Java is the same size, but it has 155 million people. So if you go to Iowa and just drop in another 153 million people, you get the kind of idea of how densely populated it is, but it also has over 50 active volcanoes. So it has excellent soils for agriculture and it's very densely populated. So here's just a picture looking at the tectonic activity in Southeast Asia, and you can see running right along that southern boundary by Indonesia, going through Papua, and then the Philippines are almost, you can't even see them because they're covered by so many earthquakes and volcanic activity. And this is a picture of a volcano in the Philippines. And here's another one. And just a month ago, end of June, another volcano started becoming very active, and they had to relocate 15,000 people, and they think it's going to continue to erupt for several months. This is a Google Earth image looking down on Krakatoa. Krakatoa is located, it was an island, it kind of is still, between Java and Sumatra in Indonesia. And in 1883, it exploded, obliterating 70% of the island. The sound could be heard in Australia. And it actually changed the world climate for a couple of years because of all the ash it put into the atmosphere. It also created a tsunami that killed something like 40,000 people as well. So it exploded, but it's coming back. The cone has risen back up. So it's still an active volcano. Now, of course, this can also create things like tsunamis with earthquakes, especially. So this was off the coast of Sumatra. An earthquake hit off the coast and it displaced water and sent tsunami waves across the Indian Ocean. And on this map, it's a little hard to tell on the bottom, on the left-hand side. The darker color is the intensity of the tsunami. And so you can make out of the beige areas, which is land masses like India, see Australia, and then you can see the mainland of Southeast Asia. So it decimated Indonesia, Thailand, the Phuket tourist region was inundated. It also did the coast of India and Sri Lanka. So it was massive damage. Over 250,000 people perished from that tsunami in 2004. On the right, you can see a before and after scenes. Now let's talk about the physical geography, the landforms, starting with the mainland. And what you're going to see if you take a look at this map, you have mountains, then lowlands with rivers running through them. Mountains, lowlands, mountains, lowlands, mountains again. And we have these rugged uplands, and most of these rivers are starting up in the Himalayas or in the mountain regions of southern China. The Mekong River is one of the largest ones in Southeast Asia and most important one for traffic. And as you can see, it comes here and goes along the border of Myanmar and Laos, as well as the border with Thailand. And if you go there, you can see all three countries on the Mekong, which we were able to do in our study abroad. And then it makes its way down on the border with Thailand and Vietnam, and eventually goes through Cambodia and exits in the Mekong Delta out in Vietnam. And that's a very important river, not only for agriculture and settlement, but also for trade. You saw lots and lots of boats going both ways from China coming to Southeast Asia and vice versa. The Red River is in the far north of Vietnam, and it comes out near Hanoi, and it has its delta up there in the northern part. The Chao Phraya comes down through Thailand. It starts up in the highlands, and it makes its way down from the mountains right through the heart of Thailand and exits in the Gulf of Thailand and Bangkok. And the Irrawaddy comes down right through the middle of Myanmar. So that creates, for example, the mountains on the Thai-Burma border. These are pretty rugged mountains, and they've always been a barrier between the two civilizations. They're two, between Thailand and Myanmar. And here I put Thai-Burma border, but now we call it Myanmar. You also see the mountains that run through Laos. It's a very rugged country. And then it comes down and exits out, and those mountains go through Vietnam. In Thailand, an important place is called the Karat Plateau. And the reason it's notable is that this is the poorest region of Thailand. It's in a rain shadow, so it doesn't have as much moisture, and it's also has very thin soils, and again is the poorest place in all of Thailand. And then Cambodia is relatively flat. Oops. Sorry, my computer did something odd there. So Cambodia is relatively flat and is very, very hot as well, by the way. It's a very warm place. Now, another thing that we see in Thailand as well as in southern Vietnam, in parts of Vietnam, is karst topography, not southern Vietnam. Much of the coastlines of Vietnam are karst islands. These are limestone-based islands. So that means that a lot of it dissolves away and some of it's resistant. And so you have this really crazy undulating landscape out in the water in the Andaman Sea and in parts of Vietnam and Thailand. This is a little bit of a fuzzy picture, but this is one in Vietnam. And you can see this amazing landscape that it creates. This is a picture that I took in Thailand. Got to go and hang out on this beach. And then this is the type of boats that you go around when you're visiting areas in Thailand. These kind of long boats with these interesting ones, but very beautiful landscapes. Now for the islands, the insular region, we have countless numbers of islands. I don't even know the number. I should look it up, but I believe Indonesia has something like it stretches over 4,000 miles and has thousands of islands. A lot of volcanic mountains, especially here in Indonesia, even in Borneo a bit, but especially in the Philippines. But they do have coastal plains, which is good for plantation agriculture and human settlement. Now, in terms of the climate, we have a couple interesting ones. If you're looking right down by the equator, you have these equatorial islands. And so they lie right on the equator. As you can see with Indonesia, it's right at 0 degrees. And that's the ITCZ, which is the Intertropical Convergence Zones, where all those trade winds from the north and the south come together and they uplift after they're getting heated, and it rains a lot. So you have that AF tropical wet climate and a lot of tropical rainforest. The mainland is a little bit different, and now we're introducing what's called a monsoon climate. And monsoon just means a seasonal shift in wind patterns. So during the summertime, the mainland, the interior of Thailand, starts to heat up and air starts to rise. And then it has to draw in then, during July, for example, air gets drawn in from the warm Andaman Sea. And that's full of moisture. And when it hits the mainland, it rains like crazy. It's torrential rainfall. I saw it happen in late July in the islands of Thailand. And it just wouldn't stop. Then it goes over and it rains, and that's the wet season for the inland parts as well, that tropical savanna, the AWs, in that pink color. But then in the wintertime, that reverses. And the winds now are going off the mainland, so they're dry. and they go out. And so that's what a monsoon is. You have a really wet, rainy season because of the change in wind patterns, and then you have a dry season. Vietnam is a little bit different. It's the opposite because it's on the other coast. So during the summer monsoon season, it's in a rain shadow. But when winter comes, the winds reverse and they start going the other direction. And that's when they get theirs, mostly in the fall and winters when they get their rainfall. So they're both monsoons, just different seasons. And then the middle has that tropical, wet and dry climate. And you can see on this one with the color gradation of precipitation, this area receives lots and lots of rainfall. It's one of the wettest places on Earth. You do see the Karat Plateau there in Thailand, right, which is a little bit less because of the rain shadows. Now, in terms of natural hazards, a big one is typhoons. This looks very similar to the Caribbean map. And a typhoon is basically just what they call a hurricane in this part of the Pacific. And the Philippines is kind of ground zero for most of these typhoons that come through. Indonesia lies outside of that typhoon belt, but not so much for the Philippines. So looking at environmental issues, one is deforestation. Over half the forests in this region are gone. There are places that still have pristine ones in places like Borneo and as well as Papua, but they're under threat. And this is for export logging, agricultural land, settlements, and then shrimp farms. Thailand has become very, lots of shrimp farms that they have as well. And so that's where you get rid of the mangrove forests. So on this map, anything that's in purple is destroyed forests. And in Thailand, back in 1989, they actually got rid of, they banned logging, mostly because they cut down most of their forests. And I'm going to come back to the elephant question here in just a moment. So let's look at palm plantations in Papua, Indonesia. Here's a road going out into the forest in 1990. By 2000, you can see 10,000 hectares are cleared for palm plantations. And 2 years later, that doubles in size, and we see more and more roads and degradation going on. And palm, here's a picture of the seedlings, the palm plantations. Palms are used for their oils for things like ethanol, cosmetics, cooking oil, and other types of uses. But it is a major threat to tropical rainforests in Southeast Asia. So let's go back to the elephants and going to Thailand. So Thailand, they have wild elephants and they have domesticated elephants. And they've been using elephants for thousands of years, everything from warfare to working. So here's an elephant working in the logging industry is what they often were used for, was getting logs out of the forest, where they would selectively harvest certain types of logs that were valuable, and then the elephants would bring them out. Here's one dragging one through the river. I'm not sure what these ones are doing, but they're loading up these logs, and it's related to the timber industry. So the debate that you have is that now that there's no more logging, what do you do with all these elephants? It takes a lot to feed them and take care of them. And some of these people are just, they wouldn't be able to, and you can't release them back into the wild. They're domesticated, they wouldn't survive. So what do you do with all these unemployed elephants? Well, the debate is whether or not they should be involved in tourism. So people riding elephants. So this does give them a job. It allows for their caretakers to take care of them, feed them, etc. But other people say it's exploitative and it can be considered animal cruelty. Now, we had a debate about this, and I'm just going to tell you a quick fun story. When we were in Thailand, we went to a place where the students had a choice, and we debated this, whether they wanted to ride an elephant or not. And so I chose not to, and I was just standing there with some of the students that were not going to ride elephants while others went off. And one student brought up the fact that there was a lot of chickens running around next to the elephants. And I said, funny you should ask. I did my dissertation on the symbiotic relationship between elephants and chickens. So you'll notice there's a lot of elephant poo around here, and that's a natural incubator. It's like a natural nest. Keeps the eggs warm. The chickens can then go and roam more freely and get better diets, and then come back and have more eggs. And at the same time, they clear out a lot of the pests, and the insects and things that bother the elephants. And then I just walked away. I didn't tell them that I was joking. And 2 weeks later, one of them says, "Did you know that Dr. Timms did his dissertation on the relationship of chickens and elephants?" Just a little funny story. Hopefully, it made you laugh and smile. If not, I'm sorry. Our last time we were in Thailand, the students as a whole said, okay, we're not going to ride the elephants. Instead, let's go out to an elephant sanctuary. So here we are at this elephant sanctuary where they rescue ones that used to be in logging or in the tourist sector or whatever. And then they just get to live their elephant life, if you will. And so here the students are feeding them things like sugarcane. Then we get to get in the water and bathe the elephants. And it turns into a water fight. The elephants start spraying you and stuff. But they're very gentle and it's really fun. Here's just another picture of us in the water with them. And then finally, another thing you can do with elephants is you can make paper out of their dung. I'm standing here in front of the Elephant Poo Poo Paper Park in Chiang Mai, Thailand, where they take elephant dung and they turn it into actual paper. And I actually made a little booklet for my wife out of the elephant poo poo paper. Just a little oddity. If you get to go, it was really a great visit. Okay, so we're going to take a break now. And on our next section, we're going to start talking about population geography in the region.